Well, folks, welcome back to the Rife Report, and today we're going to be talking about the 2026 New York gubernatorial election. We have some big news out of the state of New York where Republican Elise Stefanik has announced that she will launch a Republican bid against incumbent Democrat Governor Kathy Hochul. Now, Elise Stefanik announced her bid on November 7th, vowing to end what she quotes as quote, unaffordable policies that crush New York families. And the big question, can Elise Stefanik win the New York gubernatorial election? There are polls out there that show that it is possible. That it is possible to happen in this election. Out of the Manhattan Institute, yes, this is a Republican-leaning pollster. Yes, every other poll shows that Kathy Hochul is up, but not by that big of a margin in some of these. The most recent one from the Republicans' Gray House had Kathy Hochul up only 5 points in this election. We know that President Trump made massive gains in New York in the 2024 New York presidential election. Remember, New York voted for Biden by over 23 points in 2020. Fast forward to 2024, New York only voted for Kamala Harris by 12.6 points. Now Hochul, who has approval ratings by some metrics in the 30s, really opens the door for a Republican to win in the state of New York. But that is what we are going to be talking about today. We are going to be talking about, can Elise Stefanik win the 2026 New York gubernatorial election? Now, who is Elise Stefanik? Elise Stefanik is a Republican member of the House of Representatives from New York right now. She represents right now New York's 21st congressional district. She was initially elected back in 2014. Oops, well, that's the presidential side. She was elected back in 2014 in upstate New York right here, the 21st congressional district. This is a district she won by 21 percentage points, flipping it from 2012 when it voted for a Democrat by 2 points. Fast forward a year now. Granted, did that Democrat retire? Yes, he did. Bill Owens, he retired in the next election. Elise Stefanik ran, and she won with 55% of the vote in this election. She went on every year after that to win, 35% in 2016, 2018, a little closer, down to 13%, 17% in 2020. Now, obviously, redistricted in 2022, she won the district by 20 points, and in 2024, she won it by 24 points. Now, Stefanik entered Congress back in 2016, really as a moderate Republican, a pragmatic moderate Republican, and I still think she is pragmatic in a lot of different ways. But look, she entered as what you could say is a much more moderate Republican, but very, very quickly became a strong Trump ally. Like we said, she flipped a blue district by focusing on jobs, veterans, and upstate recovery. She secured billions for New York. Just for example, $1.2 billion in Army funding for an Army base in her district. Now, we know that Elise Stefanik is it's a long shot candidacy. Let's all be honest about this. So far, she has been endorsed by George Pataki, who was the last GOP governor from the state of New York. She ran, or I shouldn't say he won last time in 2002 for a third term in the state of New York. Go back to 2002. I mean, this was quite the year. Republicans won the state by 15 points. 15 points. Minnesota elected Tim Pawlenty that same year. It's like, oh my gosh, Tennessee had a Democrat governor back then. How different the times where Oklahoma had a Democrat governor. Things were just very, very different back in 2002, but they elected George Pataki in that midterm election, which we know was very, very good for the Republican Party. Now, looking at the current state of the election in New York, New York has been bleeding under Kathy Hochul. They have some of the highest taxes in the country, highest rents, energy costs, and grocery costs in America. And Americans and New Yorkers are fleeing at record rates from the city of New York. And not only New York, but New York State in general. Talk about the big blue states, California and New York, where they are just bleeding voters left and right. They're bleeding voters. And now that self-described communist Zohran Mamdani will be the next mayor of New York City, I will not be surprised to see another 4, 5, 6, 700,000 people just leave the city of New York City. It is terrible. Now, the 2025 elections expose the chaos in the Democrat Party and really this fallacy, this I hate to call it fake news, but this idea that the Democrat Party is moving in a moderate direction. Many Democrats are trying to spin the 2025 elections as the moderates are taking over. When the financial capital of the world, the largest city in America, elected a borderline communist in Zohran Mamdani, a defund the police advocate. Now, remember, Kathy Hochul endorsed him in this election. Kathy Hochul, who will most likely be the Democrat nominee. And look, I think how Stefanik can win is by tying her to the anti-Semitism, the rise of anti-Semitism in the Democrat Party, and the tax hiking extremism of the Democrat Party. We know crime has surged in the state. Murders are up, 20% over the last 3 or 4 years? And upstate New York is seeing opioid crisis that are being completely ignored, while Kathy Hochul and the Democrats are funding sanctuary policies in the state. The economy here is also not that great. 300,000 people have left the state since 2022. There's been a bolt to low tax havens or pro-freedom havens like Florida. Plus, you add in the fact that Democrats are trying to push a $30 minimum wage in the city of New York, which is just going to be ridiculous. Talk about inflation and prices will rise like never before. Like never before we are going to see prices rise. But like we said, look at 2024. New York has become a little bit more competitive than we saw even a couple years ago. This is a state that Trump came within 12 points of defeating Kamala Harris in this election. And we know that the current Democrat trifecta in New York is not viewed upon favorably by voters. A recent Siena poll showed that 51% of New York voters want a new governor, and independents are breaking against Kathy Hochul by about 55 to 45 in this upcoming New York, in this upcoming bid. Add on top of that, Democrats are just in a world of hurt where Kathy Hochul is being primaried by her own lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado. Now, granted, yes, do I believe that Kathy Hochul will end up being the nominee? Yes, but she is not a popular governor. She's not a popular governor by any stretch. There's a reason that her lieutenant governor is running against her. And no matter who wins, she will be scarred by the primaries. She will be. And now I think we really should talk about why. What is the playbook? What is the path forward for Elise Stefanik? Now, obviously, we know that Manhattan Institute poll from October shows Stefanik leading Kathy Hochul by a point, and she would crush Antonio Delgado by, I think it was like 7 or 8 points among likely voters in that same poll. So obviously Hochul is, I think you could say, the better candidate here. And a recent internal GOP poll shows that Stefanik leads about 46, about a tied race when you factor in the endorsement of Zohran Mamdani and the boost that we will see for conservatives in the midterms compared to 2025. 25 was a blowout. Let's just be honest about that. That was a blowout for the Republican Party. Now, I think a big part of what we're going to see is how does Elise Stefanik decide to position herself inside the Republican Party when it comes to Donald Trump. I think there's a lot of big issues that we have to look at. Just listen to Elise Stefanik on Fox News just a couple days ago talking about this.
Do you run with Donald Trump as a partner, or do you run without him?
So I run as Elise Stefanik versus Kathy Hochul. Kathy Hochul is going to try to make this about Donald Trump. This is about Kathy Hochul's failed record. She is an accidental governor. She is only in this position because she was Andrew Cuomo's lieutenant governor, who then had to step up when Cuomo was pushed out. She faces a primary herself. Her own hand-picked lieutenant governor is primarying her. I am running on my record of results. Of course I will work with President Trump. New Yorkers know that. But the polling already shows, Bill, despite the fact that New Yorkers know that I'm a strong ally of President Trump, I'm polling within single digits and in some polls ahead of Kathy Hochul. So we can win this race, and that's because traditional Democrats and independents know that under Mamdani and Hochul, the Democrat Party has been embraced by socialists. They have been taken over, so we're winning traditional Democrats. And I will
Do you run?
So I think there's a few conclusions you can jump out of this. Obviously, Elise Stefanik is trying to make this a referendum on Kathy Hochul, not a referendum on Donald Trump. We know whoever this becomes a referendum on will probably lose. If this is a referendum on Donald Trump and the Republicans, we will see Kathy Hochul most likely win re-election. But if this becomes a referendum on Kathy Hochul, you can see already trying to not put daylight between her and Donald Trump, but say that she's not running as a sidekick of President Trump. She's running to unseat a unpopular Democrat. Now, we know in the state, Democrats still register Republicans about on a 2-to-1 basis. Even if Stefanik is hitting, 54, 55, 56% with independents, she still is out of reach. It's like she really needs to be reaching kind of that 57, 58, 59% when it comes to independents in 2026. And look, and I think there are some liabilities. Like I said, look, she's a strong ally of President Donald Trump. Democrats, even though Hochul's an unpopular incumbent, she still has a war chest of over $50 million at this point between her and, political action committees that are, in line with her, that would back her, so say. And you can see right here, look, Kathy Hochul is only getting 50%. She's getting below 50% in the most recent. Now, it's a Republican-sponsored poll. I'll give that to them, no doubt. But still, it's a very interesting thing to look at. But look, most people consider it still a likely Democrat seat, which makes sense. And I have no further comment on that. It's like this is definitely a lean, likely, I won't even say safe, but likely Democrat seat going into 2026. But I think Zohran Mamdani is going to play a big part in this. I think Republicans are going to try and use him to really paint Democrats in New York City as out of touch, as they were out of touch. And we're going to obviously have to see what happens here. But we also know that midterms typically are a referendum on the party in control. The opposition typically has better turnout. But at least you have a playbook in which to play off of. Go back to 2022 when Kathy Hochul only won re-election. Now, she was actually more popular then than she is now. Lee Zeldin, who is a popular former congressman, he's now the head of the EPA in the Trump administration, but came within 6 points of unseating Kathy Hochul. We know in 2022, a lot of people give Lee Zeldin credit for bringing Republicans. Look at the seats that they flipped here. Now we're going to look here that have been flipped, different districts that were flipped in 2022. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4 seats were flipped. Republicans held some, pretty tough districts that in 2024 flipped back to the Democrat Party without that strong statewide candidate at the top of the ticket. You could see what the difference between, for in 22 for the gubernatorial election, Lee Zeldin's within 6 points versus 2024. Trump's within 12 points. They lose 4 House seats in New York. They do. So I think that Hochul or Elise Stefanik is in a halfway decent position. I think New York should really prioritize electing a Republican. Democrats have done nothing but really destroy and gut the state of New York, put them in one of the most worst financial situations they have ever been in here. But we're just going to have to see. It's like time will tell for Stefanik if she can lead a charge to become the first Republican governor in over 20 years of the state of New York. But folks, that is going to wrap things up for today. The 2026 New York's gubernatorial election, it's not just a race. It is I think for Republicans, they view it as a rescue mission from the complete disaster of Kathy Hochul and soon to be the disaster of Zohran Mamdani in New York City. And Elise Stefanik, she's ready. She's a proven winner. She fights for families, working class families. Yes, she's backed by Trump and former Governor George Pataki. And polls show that she is within single digits of Kathy Hochul, the sit-in governor. Stefanik wants to run on lower taxes, safer streets, booming jobs, funding the police, not defunding, funding the police. Really what she describes as delivering what New Yorkers demand. Not only what they're asking for, what they demand from their politicians. So could Elise Stefanik win the New York's gubernatorial election? Absolutely. Her momentum could be building. But also, at the same time, it is very realistic that Democrats could hold this seat. Obviously, I'm going to give Democrats a much upper hand over Republicans. Like we said, Democrats outnumber Republicans like 2-to-1 in the state. It's a midterm election when the Republicans are in control of the House, Senate, and presidency. So we know there's going to be a backlash to the Republican Party. But we'll see. We will see what happens. But folks, that is going to wrap things up for today. As always, drop down below. Smash that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And folks, we will catch you next time.